After this little demonstration in the workflow, we can now go here to File New and start now with our meshes. So the idea is we first need this super high poly mesh, a voxel mesh. And we have exported it from Houdini, but now I want to add it here into the system. And I do that by switching here to the Sculpt room. Now we are here, and now we load our mesh. You can use now here on the left side all these tools if you like. I'm really used to work with this spacebar here. If you tap the spacebar, you have this quick access here. And here you also have all the tools in different folders. And I go here to the objects part. And there we have the primitives, which you used a moment ago. But here's import. And if you click here, import, you can use models, which I place here in these palettes. But I have a model externally. So I go into the tools options, which open if you use a tool. And here is select mesh. I click here. And now I go into my Houdini Toothbrush project, Houdini project, and we've exported our files into the subfolder of our Houdini project from Houdini, HighPoly brush. Here it is. I go to open, and it seems that nothing has happened, and the reason for this is size. We have here a different size of the scene, and now we can scale it. You see here we have a multi-widget which you can use. You also can use here other controls, and there are keyboard shortcuts like, for example, in Maya, so Q, W, E, and R. But you also can use this multi-widget by going here into the middle. This is a scale, and if you click and drag now to the right side, you see it gets bigger and bigger. This is our toothbrush. If you are lazy like me, I go normally here and say auto scale. And what now 3D Code does is looks to the resolution, to the voxel resolution here of this layer. You remember that? And then tries to find a good size for this object so that you get nearly all the details which you had in the polygon world. And it says, okay, if you do that now, you get around 300,000 voxels or polys. If you need more resolution, you can go to the layer here and say, give me more resolution. So if you click here now here, you see now where I have 1 million polygons. And if I click auto scale, we get 300,000 again, because it says, okay, if you have a layer which has such density, you don't need too many voxels to have all these representations for the details which you have on our toothbrush. You know, there is not much going on. So I can scale a little bit more, so around 500,000 maybe is good. And if you want to place it now, you see apply again, or I press the enter key to apply it. And in this dialog, it asks me now, okay, you now imported an object into our scene, you have scaled it, and maybe you had to rotate it because you came from another application where the z-axis is looking upwards and so on. Should I store this? And I normally say, yeah, I want to have the original position and the initial scale stored. So we say, yeah, do that. Only to make sure that everything later fits. Now I can switch to other tools, and I can now start working with my toothbrush. And if you go now closer, you see, I have the feeling, so if you go here, I use the Alt key navigation here, by the way, so Alt, left mouse button, middle mouse button, right mouse button. I have the feeling here that we have from our Houdini voxelization still here some edges. So how to get rid of them? We are in a volume world here. So if you look here through all the tools, I use here my scroll wheel over this toolbar. You have here a command which is really cool, which is named Smooth All. And if you take now a closer look here, I rotate a little bit the background. Instead of using the right mouse button like in Substance Painter here, it is Shift left mouse button outside of objects. So you can now rotate here your background. You see here that we have these jagged edges here. And if you now click here Smooth All, you see it get rid of that. And we do it a little bit more so that we get a nice smoothed surface here. Great. Next thing we maybe want to do is I want to sculpt something onto that, only to show you how it works. So like I've said, it's not a full 3D code lesson, so keep that in mind. I want to stencil in here, for example, a little icon, a heart or whatever, to show you what happens if you sculpt. So to do that, we use a stencil. And a stencil is the same like in, for example, Substance Painter. It's a black and white image which you use as a mask while you are working or painting. And we have here some, but I want to have my own. So I want also to have my own folder here so that I don't clutter the original stuff. So I click here the plus sign and say, this is custom. Okay. Click OK. Now it's empty. Then we can click here the plus to load something. And now I switch again into my Houdini project. And I prepared here under texture extern, beside of my text here, a little heart. And yeah, I load this heart now here into that. It's black and white. And if you now want to work with a stencil, it's really easy. You only click here once and you have the stencil in your viewport and a little preview window. If you want to get rid of a stencil, the only thing you have to do is click here this little cancel cross. So easy like that. Activate it, deactivate it. Okay, we activate it again. I now can search for a good position where I want to place it. And one important thing is that we are, let's go out here, we are here in a perspective at the moment. What's normally good to see something in real perspective. But if you want, you see here, you can change many things here in the viewport. And if you click this little cube icon here, you click here and you are now in an orthographic view. So I can now look from the top and you can try it by hand here, or you go here into the cameras menu. Here you have top. But I go into the direction of top and now I hold while I'm navigating with the Alt key, the Shift, and now it snaps. Now I can go here into this area. There I want to place the heart. I activate the heart again. And now I want to first place the stencil. To do that, we use this menu here. First, I want to deactivate the tiling. So click here, tiling. So only one heart left. Then we can change here which direction the stencil works, how visible it is. We can make it more visible if you like, or less visible. We can use a mode, paint, distortion, and so on. We can flip and flop it, reset everything we've done here. And here we have transformation widgets. And if you click them and hold them down, you can move now this object around. You can scale, rotate, and so on. And if you want to reset it, click here. Okay. What we now want to do is I want to have it a little bit more interactive. And you see maybe this little green dot here. And if you go exactly over the dot, you see a little message. Press the right mouse button to manipulate the gizmo. And if you do that, you get this green gizmo here, which is really cool. So this gizmo can do nearly everything. So if you now left mouse button click in the middle, you move it. If you want to rotate it, you can use this here. Now you can rotate it. And sometimes it happens that this image is vanishing while you're manipulating it. Then click here on to show. So you can hide it, have an auto mode. Auto means every time you do something with the left mouse button in your viewport, remove the stencil, which is a little bit counterproductive for the thing we now want to do. So I click again here and activate here show. So it shows all the time. And if you now rotate, you see here the numbers. You can do it with shift in steps. But what I want to do here is I want to have a 90-degree. So if you grab this and try moving it, and now comes a little bit of piano playing, you click here left mouse button to rotate, and I'm rotating. And now while you are holding down the left mouse button, you click this spacebar once, and then you get a menu. Works with everything where you have a widget, and then you can type 90, for example, and press the enter key. You see now you have rotated exactly 90-degree. And then we can scale it. So let's search for the scale. Here it is. Scale it down. Go closer. Move it somewhere where you want it. Yeah. So stencil is placed. And if you now want to use these tools, you have to decide, do you want to have this thing vanishing? If you do it, then you know it go here to show again, to go to the auto mode, or you want to have it all the time. So I want to have it all the time. You search now for the right tool. You can try Grow, but what Grow does is, I have to show it here inside of that. So let's go back and go to Auto again. If you are now painting here, you will see that it's never the same height for everything. So this is something I don't want. What I want is I want the same height everywhere. And for this, I use, for example, Extrude here. So if you activate Extrude, you get the same height. The height is here, depth, or you can use here this mouse cursor. If I'm over the object here, you see this yellow circle is the radius, and you can change it by right mouse button, hold down, left and right. So this is the radius. The alpha in the middle here is under brushes. You have here many alphas. So change the alpha to something without a fall off. Now you see it here. And the red line here is the strength with the alpha. So if you hold down the right mouse button and go up and down, you see here depth is changing. And so this is the depth I want to bring in here, and I make it a little bit upwards, and you can change it here to 10%, for example. If I now go over something, you now see it doesn't add as long as I don't release the mouse, and everything is the same height. So back. If you can't go with undo, one little tip here, look under edit, which keyboard shortcut is on undo. I have a German keyboard and I had to change here my keyboard mapping so that I can use Command Z. So if you have a US keyboard, everything is fine, but yeah, this only as a little tip here. So I use now the extrude. I want to have it everywhere at the same, so we can use here a tool, which is the E menu. If you go here, you see a little menu, or you can press the E key on your keyboard. You get this menu here, and here you have different styles. And here's a style which is named Rectangle Lasso. And if you select this and you drag here lasso over the area where the heart is and release, it's filled. And you see now how this here works. So this is also a workflow which you can use. But in my case, like I've said, I go here back to that. I go here to auto. I want to show it all the time. And now I paint over this heart until it's filled completely. Okay, nice. And that's it. And now I think, I want to have it a different direction. Command Z again. While I'm painting, hold down the Command key. Okay. Now it's negative. And we've done. We can close this now and go out of the stencil. And that's the thing we have wanted to do here. So now we have finished. I go back here by clicking on the cube here to 3D, real perspective. And if you now want to bake out your normal maps, we have to switch now to the Retopo room. You remember in my introduction, I showed you that we retopoed the HighPoly mesh. But this is a step we don't need. We have a low poly mesh of our toothbrush here. So what we do now is we load our low poly mesh. So we go to the Retopo room. Here are the Retopo objects. This is empty at the moment. And I go here to the menu Retopo and I go here to import a Retopo mesh. I go into my Houdini project from Houdini and I load now my low poly brush here. I click open and now we are in a place dialog again. Oops, we have a little glitch here with this menu. So maybe we try this here first. I press the enter key. It asks me if it has to snap the objects together, because sometimes, yeah, the voxel and the reference mesh are not 100% placed. So it asks, do I want to snap it? We can say yes, so that it snaps a little bit better. And now it's done, and now I can remove this submenu here. And now we see we have still our one sculpt mesh here, the HighPoly mesh, and here we have two Retopo meshes. This here is the new imported one. This is the empty old one. I select this and say goodbye, and yeah, low poly brush, high poly brush. And here in the UV preview, you see our UV map on the low poly brush. So we have done our job, and yeah, 3D Code says, yeah, there's a little bit stretching. We can work with that, but we don't want to do it in this tutorial. Now we can start baking. So it now depends what you want to bake. So first things first, go to the bake menu. And one important setting is the name correspondence for baking. I normally have it active, but I think by default it's not active. If you have an object which is built from many sub-objects, yeah, you can also have in your Sculpt tree sub-objects, hierarchy. It normally looks, while you're baking, between the name of the Sculpt tree and search for the same name in the Retopo objects. So you bake them step by step. And we don't need that because we only have one object, and if the name is not fitting, you have a problem. Yeah, so you can do that, but that's the reason why I deactivate that so that the name is not important. So you only select here what you're working with, high poly, low poly, and everything is fine. So deactivate that if it is activated at the moment. Then we go here, and now we can decide what we want to bake. I show you here baking a normal map, but you also can use the same workflow for baking displacement maps if you like, but we make normal maps. Click here. We get this new dialog here, and now we have to configure the baker. The baking is done by shooting rays from an outer shell to an inner shell, which is around your object. And the size of the shell is really important. So if the shell is too big, you get intersections. If the shell is too small, you cut details. And this is the same like in the baker, for example, in Substance Painter. I explained it in the baking lesson there. So you can look this up. But I think it's really obvious here in this system. Why? Because we can change this. Let's switch it back to the standard. It was 10 here and 10, I think. Okay, and what you see here is now a shell. You can tell the system which shell you want to see, and I start with the outer shell because it's more visible. If you select here outer shell, you see this mesh here is bigger than the original mesh. And if you toggle the ghosting here, you maybe see the original toothbrush, or better to say our Voxel toothbrush here inside of this shell. Here it is. So what you now have to find is the size of this outer shell so that it's close to the surface, so that you don't shoot rays here which you're not interested in, but you don't cut anything of the mesh. So you go now over the outside shell options, and now you drag, and you see you get closer, 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 closer. And at some point, suddenly, you cut into the mesh. Let's try this. So I cut into the mesh, and now you see, if you now bake, these details here will not be baked. This will be a problem. So what you have to make sure is that your outside mesh is big enough for all the details which you have sculpted on your toothbrush. So make sure that's the case. Yeah. And you see, it's a really low value here. So you don't need too big values here. You can have a little bit more secure if you like, but yeah, that's it. Now let's look into the inner shell, because it shoots from the outside to the inner side shell. Switch it. Toggle the ghosting, and you see, if you now activate the ghosting, you see this is the inner shell, and you have here collapsed objects here. And this is something we don't want, because then the result will be screwed up in this area. So I go now to the inside object, and I bring it out, and the same thing like before, I don't want to cut into details. And I made this hard here by intent. So if I make this now too big, the inner shell, let's test it. Yeah. Now you see that we cut from the inside into this heart. And here in this area, you run into problems. So you have to make sure that all the details are also not clamped. So go here, bring it back until everything is inside. Yeah. Look around, everything is fine, I hope. That's it. And now you have your values. That's it. Now you can look a little bit here to these values here, but yeah, this is everything okay. I click now OK. And now in this here, dialog here, this is the import into the pixel paint room, this room here. And if you watch the banana project where I use 3D code, you've seen how I import something into the pixel paint room. So this is the same dialog. You tell here the system, okay, I have a UV map, use it. Yeah, we have it on the low poly brush because now it brings the low poly brush Retopo object into the paint room. That's the reason why we have this import here. So keep the UV, and here you tell now the system which UV map you want to use. We only have one with the name UV, that's okay. And here we tell now which texture size we want to have. And I switch this here to 4K, for example. And then we click OK. And now it takes a while, because now we are baking the normal map from the Sculpt object to the low poly object in 4K. And this message is not important for us at the moment, so I click OK. Everything seems to be done. So let's switch to the paint room and look what we have. Inside of the paint room, it looks great, but keep in mind that this here, what you see here, is maybe our Sculpt, because one of the standard settings here, under view, is show voxel objects in the paint room. So you can paint on voxel objects, so that's the reason why it is here. So we don't want to see the voxel objects. If you look here through the tabs here, you can see here there's the Sculpt tree, and I deactivate here the eye on the HighPoly object only to make sure that we don't see the Sculpt object. So in the Sculpt room it's also gone now because eye is gone. So if you go to paint, now we don't have a Sculpt object anymore here. And now you see, wow, we have this heart here now on the surface. And if you look into the texture editor, I drag it out for you, make it a little bit bigger. Oops. Activate wireframe and middle mouse button drag. You see here, this is the color of the surface at the moment because it uses the color from the shader from the Sculpt room. And here we can switch now and we say, show me the normals. And if you now take a look here, you see these are my normals here, which are baked out. Great. Yeah, I get rid here of the texture editor. If you ever lose pop-up, you can go here to Windows, pop-ups, and here you have all the pop-ups you need. And you also can reset this page to default if you want to have everything clean and tidy again. Yeah, and that's the steps. Now we have here this heart on the surface. Our normals are there. They are stored here on this layer here in the layers stack normal map. So if you deactivate here the visibility, you see these are our normals, which you've baked. And yeah, this is the HighPoly brush color. You can deactivate this or throw it away because we don't need that. And then we can have here new layers, and here we can now paint if we like. Last step now, we want to export now this normal map. If you want to paint now, you can do it. The normal map will react like depth information, like I've showed in the banana project. So we've painted here with different colors and styles and so on. So, and then we went in the banana project here to file, export objects and textures, and exported everything. If you only want to export this normal map here, you don't need to go this way here. You can go it, but I show you a different way. You go here to textures, and under export here, you can now export different kind of things. And we want to have the normal map here as tangent space from the low poly mesh. I do that here. I'm saving it. Let's go here into the project and make a new folder from 3D code and say this is normals. We can decide that we want to have PNG here, save it, takes a while, that's it. Now let's switch back here to Houdini And I jump out here. I go into my material network and I make a new principled shader here. And we name this here now wood from 3D code so that we know what's going on. And to have a nicer color, we change it to something really bright, yellowish, something like that. Go to the brush, select it, and relink it to the right material network. Wood from 3D code. Here it is. Let's test this first. Go to the render view, click render. Here we are. Go a little bit closer, and I only want to render this area, so I hold down the shift key and drag here to make a rectangle here. Now you see we only get this here, and you see there are no normals at all. This is the original brush we had. Stop this. And now we go into the wood from 3D code. I go to bump and normals. Enable here now the normal map. It's normals in tangent space. I load now from 3D code, from this folder, these normals here as PNG. Now they are here, and now we can test this again. So render this. Still not there. Let's check what we are rendering. I go into the brush and you see we are rendering the high poly brush. That's not the thing we want. We want to render the low poly brush. Let's do it again. And now you see that we get the heart here. Everything is fine, but it looks that it's outside here of the surface and not inside. So make this smaller. And the reason for this is axes. So you have a normal map which stores axis information, and if it hasn't the same axis orientation in your 3D application, like in the painting application, the direction looks wrong. So what you can do is here you can flip these axes here around. And what I do now here is I flip, for example, Y, and now you see that now this heart is indented like it should be. That's it. Now you have seen the whole workflow, how you can work with that. And at this point here, you are now ready to paint your object in 3D code. And after painting, you can export it, like I've said here under File, Export Object and Textures in this dialog. And if you want to see how this here works, you can look into the banana project where we painted our banana in 3D code. Or if I have time, I can't promise at the moment, I will capture you the session how to texture the whole toothbrush here in 3D code. I hope this helped. My name is Helge Maus from Pixeltrain. Please leave your questions in the comments. If you like this, give me a thumbs up and subscribe. And I'm happy that you wrote me so many emails and comments that you like this series. I will keep it up. So have a nice day. Have fun. Helge Maus.